The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome to the Happiness Jungle TV show. We are live. This is the first time that I am getting to do my show live on Facebook, so I'm pretty excited about it. And it is all about helping you enjoy your life more. No matter what you go through in life, I promise you, as many cookies that are crumbling in your life, you can get through each one of them with a sweeter smile. Today, I am really excited to be able to share the platform with a gentleman from New York City. That's my birth state, and I love what he is all about. You know, we get into relationships sometimes with all the love and the goodwill right from the get-go, and as time goes by, sometimes things just don't work out. But it doesn't mean that it has to end with a sour note. And Mr. Jeffrey Mark Bloom from New York City, he is a mediation specialist. Do you know that when you're going through any kind of a split and you're married and there's family, concerned, whether it's a family with children involved or maybe it's just a couple, wouldn't it be nicer to understand how to end a relationship with peace and harmony, maybe even be able to do an uncontested split. And that's what that's what Jeffrey is all about. So I'm really excited to be able to have him on our show. He is truly all about family and divorce mediation. He's all about being a creative solutionist. And that's what this show is all about. So without further ado, I want us all to welcome my guest, Mr. Jeffrey Mark Bloom from New York City. Hey, Jeff, how are you?
How you doing, Lyn-Dee? Thank you for having me on.
Oh, well, you're kidding me. Thank you very much. I believe in you, and I believe that your message is very solid and strong. And in the Happiness Jungle, I'm all about helping people have solutions how to live a happier life. So I couldn't ask for a better person to come on than somebody that literally helps people figure out how to stop fighting and to divide things maybe equally, maybe to where everybody is comfortable. So how do you do that? What are the beginning steps when a couple comes to you and has a challenge? They don't seem that they're going to be able to work things out, and they come to you with hope that they're going to be able to at least leave on a good note. How does that work? Does it always have to be state appointed, Jeffrey, or do people come to you voluntarily? Let's start with that question.
All my clients come to me voluntarily, private. They don't come through the courts. The biggest challenge we mediators have is a lot of people don't know that mediation is an option. They think they have to go to an attorney and they got to fight for everything, and they get a lot of misinformation from attorneys. So mediation is a way for a couple to come in, and nobody knows what's best for their children, for their finances, for what it takes moving forward than the couple themselves. Not a judge, not an attorney telling them what to do, or even worse, being forced to sign a stipulation settlement because they ran out of money, and it turns into a win-lose or even worse, a lose-lose situation. Mediation, I like to think of it as a win-win, because a couple has control of the process, and whatever goes into the final agreement and the final papers is what they want, not what somebody tells them what to do.
Amen. You know, I unfortunately, I'm divorced again, second time, and
Me too. Twice.
Yeah, there you go too. And it was better to be able to be civil and cordial to one another. Did we have a little bit of challenges agreeing on certain things? We did. But when we learned how to pause and how to also communicate with a professional like yourself, it makes things so much clearer because you're bringing a third party into it that's not emotional. Right?
Absolutely.
And that's what you do. Isn't that true? When you sit down with a couple, you really help them be able to take the emotion out of it if that's at all
Sometimes.
possible, share with me how that works.
Well, sometimes it gets emotional, and one of the myths are, well, don't we have to agree on everything before we come to mediation? No, you don't. I've had couples come with a list of everything that they agreed upon, and more cases than not, they come in with they don't agree on anything and somewhere in between. So the reason mediation works, and I'm partial because I'm a mediator, is you're sitting in a room together and you're hearing each other, and then me as a mediator help them get to the underlying issues. So you'll remember the telephone game when we're in school, right? Where the teacher says something to somebody in the front of the room, and by the time he gets around to the end, it's totally different than what they said. That's how the litigation process works. So Lyn-Dee, you tell your attorney what you want, your attorney tells his attorney tells him, and it's a back and forth, right? And how do you communicate that? How do you know? So if you're in a room together, even if you won't outwardly say or acknowledge that you agree with the other party or how they're feeling, you're hearing it. You're right there in front of each other. So in the subconscious mind, you're like, wow, I didn't know she felt that way, or oh, I didn't know he felt that way. You may not come out and say it, but you're there. So there's no miscommunication. There's no, between attorneys and back and forth, let alone the billing and what the cost differences are between litigation, which we can get into a little bit later. But that's pretty much how it works. I act as a neutral third party to help them get to a resolution on what they need, that they can live with comfortably and happily with their lives moving forward, single now, versus, being together.
Now let's make sure that everybody understands a mediator is completely different than a counselor.
Correct. Totally different. It's not even close.
Correct. So I just want everybody to realize that when they make this choice, that they're not going to a marriage counselor. They're not going to get advice on how to stay together. That's not what you do. You try to help them resolve into a happy medium that they all walk away in a peaceful manner. Is that correct?
That's correct. But just to let you know, Lyn-Dee, that I've been doing this a little over 6 years now, 6.5 years, and I've had two I can remember on top of my head, who during the mediation process, they learned to communicate. They decided not to get divorced. So I want to say there was three.
Nice.
I want to say there was three, and then one of them had come back a couple of years later. It didn't work, so they decided to go for divorce. But they gave it a shot for another 2 years. So that's the positives of what comes out of, other than having an amicable agreement and leaving not mad at each other, versus also with the litigation process, parent alienation and using the children against the other spouse happens a lot in the litigation process. And I'm all about the best interest of the children. And it's not just a saying, it's actually meaningful. The courts say that, but there's no meaning behind it.
That is true. I want to step right now into, since you brought them up, our beautiful children. Our beautiful children that had no desire to be a part of this battle, and we don't have the right to create them to be the victim.
Absolutely.
So when people come into you, there could be maybe, possibly, one of them that just feel very vindictive, and they know that the only way to get to their future ex-spouse is through the way of the children. And I'm sure that you could feel that and you could sense that when the couple is sitting with you.
It'll come out sometimes.
Yeah. How are you able to soothe that?
What I do is, what I find is when it gets to that, and usually one of them will say, well, you're not doing that with my son, or you're not doing that with my daughter. So I stop it right there, and I say, you mean Johnny you're both mom and dad to Johnny. Well, I'll put the name of the child in, because now it becomes personal. If they say my son, my daughter, my child, it kind of depersonalizes it, right? Wow. So I try to bring the name in and remind them that they're both mom and dad. Very rarely will I have a couple where one of the parties doesn't care. I think it's happened once or twice over the 6 years, where and I'm pretty much shocked on it when that happens. But generally, both want to be part of their children's lives, and as close to being mom and dad as possible, which they will always be. But now they're living separate and apart, so not using the children as pawns, and parent alienation is a very, very horrible thing that happens during the litigation process. And I try to prevent that, and I would guess that because they're going through mediation, that doesn't happen afterwards.
Yeah, I like that. There are so many people in the world that are ending a relationship. They have children, And I love how you say you bring the name in. That is beautiful. So would you suggest that from this point on, because we have so many people watching our show, maybe to figure out, maybe how to keep the relationship together, but this topic is how to leave a relationship on a peaceful manner. Would you recommend, instead of them saying my child or even our child, call the child by name? Because you are right. I could understand how very quickly the child is no longer a possession. The
Right.
child's a person.
Absolutely.
Oh, Jeffrey, that right
So I
there
use
is a gold nugget, because there are so many people in the world, and I know this for a fact because I also help people co-parent, step-parents, and I love this because I really believe that two homes, even after a split, should still be running simultaneously the same.
Absolutely. And the best interest of children is really something to consider. It's not just a statement. It's not easy for children. I was a child of divorce myself, so I know what it's like. So again, trying to make it as easy, not only as easy for the couple, but more importantly, the children.
Yeah. And would you agree that once they really do take the child and put the child first, that maybe the process is also easier, instead of it being so personal against the man and the women, or I should say against the couple?
Well, it depends on the issues and what the reason they're getting divorced and so forth. But generally, that's a true statement. Yes.
Yeah. And so the majority of the people that you see, I love to hear that people are looking to rectify versus hiring attorneys, going in front of judges, constantly going back and forth to court. You hear it all the time. It's really, it's a horrific nightmare. And all they're doing is supporting the justice system. That's not even a justice system to them, right?
No, and they're losing their time, money, and sanity.
Yeah.
All at the same time.
That's right.
You know?
So now let's talk about, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, just let's hit the money aspect. In New York, if you go through litigation, you're both going to pay a retainer to an attorney that's going to average anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 each. That's just a start. So, Lynn, you know that when you pay an attorney retainer, that retainer is gone no matter what you do, right? They're going to bill you out for the retainer.
That's right.
So you're looking at $10,000 to $30,000. And that's not going to be all inclusive. Mm-hmm. Versus a mediation, generally the average cost is less than $6,000 total. Mm-hmm. That's a big difference.
It's a big difference.
You want to finance your attorney's kids' college fund or your kids' college fund? Are you going to fight for something? And then if one side wins, great. So now there's less of a pool, right, to pull from, right? So if mom insists on getting X amount a month, because she has the kids and this much spousal support, and the judge says, okay, that's what you have to pay. And dad can't do that because dad's living on his own. He's got his own expenses. So dad might keep up with it for a little while, right? And then he can't do it anymore. And then mom's got to bring him back to court, and they both have to hire attorneys again. Mm-hmm. If they both have a say, so here's a good example. There's something called the Child Support Standards Act in New York. And it's based on how many children you have and the income of both parents. So let's just say, based on the Child Support Standards Act, and let's see, because this is most of the time, mom's a residential parent, dad's got to pay $1,500 a month. And dad says, well, look, I can't afford $1,500 a month in mediation. I'm paying, for Sally's dance class and Billy's Boy Scouts, and I'm paying for health care. I've got my own place, and I'm going to contribute to extracurricular activities. I can pay $1,100 a month. I'm just making up numbers here. Right. Mom says, okay, that's good, $1,100 a month. Now they both have a number. They're less likely at all to breach that because dad's coming up with a number based on a budget that we do also in mediation that he can afford. It's not just figurative numbers, right? So it's not a judge saying, Child Support Standards Act, $1,500 a month, that's it. Well, Judge, I can't do that. Too bad. What good does it do anybody? And that happens all the time in family court, all the time. All the time. Yeah.
How do you feel about not paying child support, but doing the 50-50 right thing to do for the child? If the child needs to go to, let's say, dance, we'll just take an activity, for instance. Dance is $100 a week. What's wrong with both parents just paying 50-50? I just believe that sometimes child support is sorry to say, and I may get some people angry at me right now, it's ridiculous. Some of the child support that people are getting, now I've raised children. I know what it costs to raise a child. I know exactly the extras. I know it all. But if there's a couple out there, say I'm so equal, right? If there's a couple out there and I have to have a home with an extra bedroom for my child, right, the other half has to have a residence with a bedroom for that child.
Absolutely.
We still have to pay rent for each other's living accommodations.
Correct.
Sometimes the child support is rapist. You know, it's crazy. Versus figuring out what is the budget for the child a month, and it could go over, and splitting that.
Right. I've had couples agree to pay more than what the standard was, and a lot less than or almost nothing, depending on what they agree upon. But just like you said, one of the, I don't know if the word is a myth, maybe not the right term, but what the courts will do is, well, the children and the mom should live under the same, the financial same that they used to, right, during the marriage. But it's not the same. You're splitting up. You don't have the same income. Why should one side be penalized because you can't live under the same, because now you don't have two incomes? Why is that a criteria? Right. It doesn't make sense. It's not the same. It's different. Everybody's got to adjust. Different world, you know. That old saying, "Oh, I won't get divorced. It's cheaper to keep her." Right? We've all heard that crazy saying. But why should you be in a relationship you're not happy with because you can't afford to get divorced? That's not good for the children. The children know what's going on. It's horrible.
Yeah, and every situation is unique and different. It's the same, because all that really changes are names and faces, but there are unique twists in different situations. Now, absolutely. I know couples as well where she was the homemaker for the last 25 years, and, you know, she took care of everything, and she was asked not to work to be, you know, in that position. So, yes, there needs to be compensation so the woman can get back on her feet, or the man. There's a lot of
absolutely. Right.
Home moms now, right? What are they called? Stay-at-home moms, stay-at-home dads.
Stay-at-home dads, right.
So that's not what we're talking about here, right?
No, we're not talking about that. And we're also talking about people who go through the litigation system think they're entitled to more because of infidelity or something like that, and that has nothing to do with it. But an attorney will feed that ego. You go to an attorney, and they see your net worth statement, and they know what they're going to bill, and they'll promise them the star, the moon, the sun, and the sky. And keep racking up the bill. And no attorney worth their salt, whether how good they are, can guarantee an outcome. They don't know what a judge is going to decide.
That's right.
They just don't.
That's right.
So you have that going out there. And then what happens when you run out of money? Then they put a lien on a house. They're going to get their money no matter what. Yeah. Now, there are good attorneys out there. I work with some attorneys that I refer business to. They refer me, who really care about getting the couple to a place where they're both happy. But for the most part, it just doesn't happen that way.
Yeah, I get so excited when I'm able to sit down with a couple, and even if they're ready for the departure, right? Even if they're ready for the departure, but we have so much more clarity. The fight within them is no longer that vindictive. I'm going to rape her. I'm going to rape him. I'm going to take him through the coals. That is such... Oh, it's such an evil way of thinking, and nobody wins. Absolutely nobody wins. Ever. And you walk around, and now you're starting to hide things because if he or she knows what I have, then they're going to go after this. We could eliminate all that, can't we?
Absolutely. In mediation, everything's flexible. Everything. Yeah. Like I gave you an example of child support, or now you have the marital home. And you have 401ks and pensions plans. So a lot of times something will happen. Okay, mom keeps the marital home, dad keeps his pension plans and 401ks, or vice versa, however that works. Right. Or you keep the cars, you keep the vacation home, I keep my pension plans. There's a lot of flexibility, and as long as they agree to it, and it's in writing in a legal contract, which is called a stipulation of settlement, the judge will sign off on it because the couple agreed. There's a big difference of having an input as to what you want in there versus somebody telling you what to do. Mm-hmm. There's a really huge difference. And people don't realize that. And they get misinformation. They'll call attorneys, and attorneys will say, no, you can't go to mediation. Or even worse, if you go to mediation, the mediator has to be an attorney. Well, that's not true at all. Because an attorney can't, and there are attorney mediators out there, but a lot of them don't go through mediation training. They're only trained to be an advocate, and there's a big difference being an advocate for somebody and fighting and being a neutral third party. On top of that, if they have the training and they are mediating and they are an attorney, their attorney hat comes off. They have to be a mediator. They can't give legal advice. They can't tell them what to do. So there's that misconception, and people have that in their head, like, oh my God, I was told I have to go to an attorney, and then they get stuck and they're in a litigation process, and 2 years later, there's nothing left to split, or 3 years, or 5 years, or.
That's right. It's like everything that they worked so hard for is down the drain, and it went right into the justice pocket.
Yep. Absolutely.
Completely stayed out of yours, and they're both very angry. Well, why are you angry? So one of the things that, like I said, that I love to do is bring couples together, whether they're staying together or not, and allowing them to understand how to separate peacefully and happily, because there is a way. And I love that. What is the most common misconception, the common misconception when two people come into your office? What is it? Because I know that there's a common misconception that everybody just wants to keep hitting their heads up against the wall, and they get very confused at it. What is that?
I know what I'm entitled to. My girlfriend is also married, and they have the same amount of kids, and our husband makes the same amount of money, and when she got divorced, she got A, B, C, and D. And I tell them, no two cases are exactly like. You don't know everything else that's involved, and you can't use that as an example. And they'll say to me, well, what, Jeff, I want to know what I'm entitled to. Well, I'm not here for that. I'm here to help you both come to an agreement of what works for both of you, not who's entitled to what, because then that gets into a different argument. For example, I don't like to use the word custody. It's a residential parent, and it's a parenting plan. That's a better term. It's a less conflicting term, right? Versus mom's got custody or dad's got custody, and it's just a horrible term. So it's just the way you word things and the way they feel about it. And again, to use examples, well, my friend told me, or you hear that all the time on a regular basis, and it's kind of funny. Sometimes I laugh a little bit about it because it's a misconception. You can't go by what somebody else. The way their divorce worked or what they got or didn't get, because it's just not the same. I like to treat every case as individual as possible. And sometimes they'll throw it back at me. Well, Jeff, we can't decide. What do you think we should do? And I don't want to tell them, because then my opinion comes in, right? We're all human. So I'll say, first thing I'll ask them is, well, what do you think? Do you have any other ideas? And if they really don't, I'll say, well, let me tell you what other couples have done in a similar situation. So it's still their decision. It's the ball's still in their court, and they still have control of the process, versus me telling them what I think.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that. I don't like when I hear, I give your mother enough child support, she could buy that for you. I give your father enough child support, he could buy that for you. They don't give me enough child support, go back to them and tell them you need this. Oh my God, you've just victimized your child. You've done it. You put him right there in the middle of your mesh.
Absolutely.
That's not fair. It's not right.
And it happens all the time, especially during the litigation system. It happens all the time.
Yeah, and it's all because the couple is still so angry at one another.
But also they're going through the litigation process of fighting, and they're demanding this and demanding that. So, and then it continues into the afterlife, right? Into the after post-divorce issues, and they're still fighting, and that's not paying. And the judge told him he had to pay $3,000 a month, and he's only paying me $2,000 because he says he can't afford it. Well, maybe he can't. Or maybe she can't.
Right.
So what are you going to do? It's just, and it doesn't happen, I would like to think, during the mediation process, because they have a say on what goes in everything, like I said earlier. And if they want a consulting attorney or a review attorney during the mediation process, they could do that. I welcome that if they want to.
Sure.
And if it makes them feel comfortable. And so it's not a total, you're giving up everything. You should be aware of what's going on. But most couples don't. Most of my couples, they came to mediation to save money and save their sanity. They don't want to create something more out of it. And it's definitely a much better process. It really is.
I agree with you. I think that everybody, when you're going through a divorce or a hard time, no matter what the divorce is about, I think your first step is absolutely contacting a mediator. And I think you should contact Jeffrey. Now, you're in New York. So does that mean that you're only good for mediation in the state of New York? Or I want you to share, because we're coming to a close. I can't believe it, but I do want people to know how to get a hold of you, and I do want people to know where you're allowed to serve them. You know, I'm in New Hampshire now. I go down to Florida. Tell me go ahead and share how we could get a hold of you and what areas you could serve.
Okay. You can reach me on my website at mymediationservices.com. I have done some online dispute resolution. Now, there are some states that have certifications for mediators. New York's not one of them. So I can't, quote unquote, practice. And I think New Hampshire is one of them, Florida, Tennessee. However, I could do an online mediation of, say, there's 2 people in Florida, and I could do a memorandum of understanding. And this is everything that we discussed and what they agreed upon. They could take that memorandum, go to an attorney, have the divorce papers done, and they're through. They could do that as well. I could do Skype sessions just like me and you were doing. I could do phone conversations, which I've done. I've had one party here in New York, one in Florida, and we've mediated to success. I had a couple who lived upstate New York in Westchester County. I met with them the first session in person, and everything else was done remotely. So it can be done. And they both had consulting attorneys that they were going back and forth. So it took a little bit longer, but that's fine. But it got to a point where they were happy, and then we completed the process.
I love it. I think you and I could be partners. You go ahead and do the mediation, and I'll make sure that I help them consult so they could have 2 happy homes that all the children could go and live in, instead of grabbing those luggages going from one home to the other, and you know they get very heavy. So I love what you're all about. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be on my show with me. It gives me the greatest pleasure. We were introduced by Cammie Baker, who is an amazing woman, and that's what it's all about. So for the audience, I want to let them know that, you know, whatever you're trying to accomplish, make sure you're hanging around people that are positive, that can help you with hope, can help you with solutions. And Jeffrey, that is what you're all about. So you're exciting to me. We're going to go ahead and close off the show. Do you have any of the last, like a 30-second tip for our audience?
Just be educated. If you're going through the divorce or separation process, or the post-divorce process, you know, talk to mediators, talk to attorneys, so you make an educated decision. You don't say 10 years, oh, I should have done this, I didn't know about mediation. Be educated, know all your choices, and before you make such an important decision.
Wow. Thank you so, so much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it from an expert's mouth, how you could go ahead and end a relationship peacefully. And I hope you take this advice, because life is not easy. I never said it was, but I did say that you could be happier. This is Lyn-Dee Eldridge, your Chief Happiness Officer of the Happiness Jungle, wishing you and your family a happier tomorrow. Bye, everybody. Say bye, Jeffrey.
Take care.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.